Hamilton County Sheriff Jim Hammond kicks off the show this morning talking about a couple of topics that are on a lot of people's minds. Sheriff Hammond, good morning and welcome back to the show. I want to begin with jail overcrowding. And this is something that you've been talking about for ages. And now this situation is kind of reaching critical mass.
It is. You know what, Chip? Our jail's over 40 years old, and we've got almost 2,000 prisoners locked up in this county, and we need to make some changes.
Sure.
I think what we've seen, and to refresh people's mind in the last few weeks, the commission has turned the old workhouse over to me as a secondary jail. So now we have the Jail Central and Silverdale as a jail.
Now the Jail Central is designed to house how many prisoners?
It was actually originally designed for 500. In its past history of 40 years, there's been times there have been 900 in. Today, we're probably a little over 600. We had to do a lot of remodeling, and even the 600 is overcrowded. Sometimes you'll have in a what ought to be no more than a 5 or 6 man cell, you may have 15 or 20 in there. So we've reached the point where we've had to transfer prisoners out to what was then the workhouse.
Right.
And I've got about 400 out there. So that's when we decided to take a look, are we using the facility in the best possible way? So the commission did decide that the workhouse would go out of business, it would become a jail. You can still serve a workhouse sentence out there. So when you look at both, I think today's population was a little over 1,600 that we had totally.
Personally, I've got to wonder why the commission didn't turn this over to you years ago.
You know, we're one of only 2 counties in the whole state that was, the workhouse was under the mayor and not under the sheriff. And when I had discussions with the mayor about it, he asked that same question, you know, why is it under us? And I said, it probably goes back into the 40s when we had the farm out there. We raised a lot of vegetables for the prisoners.
Right.
And that's probably the reason.
What's the next step in getting a new jail built downtown? Because that building's beyond rehab.
It
right?
is. Actually, we're looking towards not building one downtown. We're thinking about going out to the Silverdale site and building a jail. I would like to see us transition over the next 5 years with a different model because of some diversion programs we're looking at. I think we can bring it in at a lot less cost. We were looking at 2 major companies who got into the final bidding war, if you will, well over $100 million. That's just almost untenable.
And a lot of the folks who are in the jail, there probably should be at another facility geared more towards mental health.
We have a lot of folks in there that cannot make bond, and sometimes it's a case that it's not a violent case, so we need to look at more of the ankle bracelet, more of some creative diversion to keep them out. The mental health is a big problem. Probably 25–30%, depending on what day you're looking in there, are mental health patients. We're not a mental health hospital. We don't even have a psychiatrist on board. We're spending a lot of money on psychotropic drugs. That's not the business we ought to be in. When we closed the mental health hospitals 30 years ago, the jail became a mental health hospital again.
Yeah, just sort of a clearinghouse.
It is.
That's not the purpose it was designed for.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears here for a moment. Obviously, the big story over the weekend, the deadly shootings down in Texas. And I'm sure your phone, as it is with every mass shooting, has been ringing off the hook. How do I safeguard my church? People,
you know, they just say, what are we doing when people can't even go in and worship on Sunday at the church of their choice and have to face this? A lot of it is mental health issues. You know, we have a lot of folks out there that are falling between the cracks. We're letting it's too easy for them to get weapons, and I do believe that we have the right to go armed if you do it properly.
Sure.
But unfortunately, we have too many people that are letting people slide through the system, or they're stealing weapons, or it's too easy for them to get them in certain ways. So now we have the churches calling, so what do we need to do to make ourselves more secure?
What's your advice to those churches?
Well, first thing I say, you need to take a good safety check. We can provide that service at the Sheriff's Office. The city does some of that. We'll come in and take a look at where your most vulnerable points. We'll give you some easy fix, if I might put it that way. And it doesn't require a lot of money. Sometimes it's just using your own congregation as security teams.
Right.
A lot of churches have this don't ask, don't tell in terms of if you've got a legal permit to carry a weapon, they ask you don't have it exposed, and that's kind of crazy. If you wear it exposed, you're asked to be shot first.
Sure.
So the concealed is better, but I think it can be as simple as saying we're going to have to do a little changes for everybody's protection. Maybe you restrict backpacks coming into the main auditorium. Have some staff that are volunteer staff that are certain exits as you watch. In my own church, we have security teams where we have a number of teams that rotate so nobody gets overburdened. You sit in certain locations on your duty day. You do a little, I won't use the word profiling, but you're looking for the person that stands out. You haven't seen them there before. They may look disheveled in some way. They may be carrying a backpack. So there's a number of things you look for to try to make it. And sometimes your parking lot duty is the first one to realize.
How so?
In that they see somebody come in, park, doesn't seem like they fit. They may be riding around a little bit. They may come out with a big bulky coat on. They may just look like they're canvassing the area. That's sometimes the first ones who see somebody that needs to be checked on.
It is nice to know that the sheriff's office can provide and does provide safety checks for churches. If they want to get a little bit more involved into the, going deeper, if you will, into the safety procedures, can you make recommendations to them? You don't necessarily have to do it on the air here, but can you make recommendations?
I certainly
to
can,
them
and I've had,
privately?
even this morning, a pastor called me, wanted to know if we could talk or arrange for him to meet. And he did indicate a good point. He says, we have a couple of officers that park and do their reports on our lot on Sunday morning. That's a great idea. And we have other pastors call me and said, listen, if you got officers that come by our church regular, we'd be glad to furnish them with a key to come in and use the bathroom or write their reports or have a cup of coffee. Right. And that's kind of a creative way to say, okay, we can get a little bit of free security extra when the officer's on break and those kind of things. So, yeah, we'll be glad to do that.
It seems like a shame that we're hearing so many mass shooting stories, especially in churches, where essentially it's like
where it ought to be safe.
In a barrel.
Ought to be the safest.
Among every place, it should be the safest. Hamilton County Sheriff Jim Hammond, thanks so much for your time. We look forward to coming to you back as your schedule permits.
Thank you.
Stick around. We've got a lot more as we continue on on Let's Chat. It is Monday, the 6th day of November. If you'd like to find out more about some of these free safety precautions, check out the website, hcsheriff.gov, hcsheriff.gov. Hang in there. More of Let's Chat right after this.